If God removed you from a table where you used to sit, it's because you were being saved from the poison they were serving. Welcome back, everybody. It is Thursday, the 9th of March, 2023. Almost forgot about how to do my intro. And that makes today, I believe, I'm not even going to tell you the episode number. It's somewhere in the 60s, high 60s. How is everybody? You can't answer that, so I'm going to pause for a second for effect, take a sip of my drink. My drink, by the way, is a coffee. I'm still sober. 60 whatever days this episode is how many days sober I am. And boy, it was tough this week. I actually really considered the other day having something to smoke or having something to drink. And, just fucking saying fuck the world and frick the world and frick all this. Actually, it's not for kids anyway. So, fuck the world, fuck everything. I mentioned the other day that I was having a hard time processing something. And I have just come back from getting a haircut. I got all of them cut. I'm so sorry. I've just come back from a haircut and I'm feeling fresh and I'm feeling like a new man. And I also feel like I have processed everything enough that I'm ready to talk about what it was that had me in my feels, that had me pushed to the edge of almost giving up on my sobriety goal, that almost stopped me from recording this podcast for the day. And to cut it simply, but I'll put a complete explanation on here. And fuck, man, it's actually it's a lot harder to say than I thought. I got fired. I got let go of my job. Now, I'm going to explain everything that happened, everything that transpired, I guess, from my point of view. And then where I'm left with all of that and how it looks. And just know that I am okay. I'm fine. Like, everything's chill. Mads and I have some money put away, so we're chilling. We're just going to sort of ride it out. And I'm not scrambling necessarily to find new work. I went on the websites. We got Seek and Indeed or whatever. There's 43,000 jobs going in Melbourne. And I'm qualified to do at least 20,000 of them. So I'm chilling. I'll just wait till I hear from some stuff. Anyway, so what happened was I was managing 2 stores in retail. Now we would turn over on average about 20K a week in each shop. And as busy as we got, I think the busiest week we did was Christmas or Boxing Day, whatever, where we turned over between the 2 stores. I think it was just shy of $94,000. So I'm no stranger to running shops, running businesses, and having them successful. In fact, the 12 months that I did that dual store role, we turned over a profit of, I think, $33,000, or a revenue, of $330,000 over target. In terms of profit, I couldn't tell you because the business only operated off revenue numbers, not the profit numbers. We didn't get that far into it as store managers or dual store managers. But I was in charge of, hiring, firing, development, planning, inventory management, stock takes, you name it. I had every part of the responsibility. And so as the business that I was working for started to, I want to say, crumble, essentially. And for context, I could read the room. You could tell by the language that changed. You could tell by the way that operations changed. You could tell by the way that my leadership, my bosses, would talk about things that they were getting, and how intense they started to become about KPIs and targets, and just how bullshit they became, micromanagerial. You could tell that things weren't going good from the top. Anyway, so I predicted a store closure about 2 weeks before it happened. And then I predicted another store closure about 2 weeks before that happened. And then I hit a point where my mental health was just not having a good time. Now, at the time I was also smoking and drinking. And so there was multiple other factors. Obviously, Otis had his brain issue. Maddie had been in hospital with Crohn's. I got married. There was so many different things that happened last year that I just felt like I couldn't catch up because I had to commit so much of my life to running these 2 stores and doing this successfully. And then on top of that, the pressure of the job while I was there, we were being inundated with stock. At one point, I had 1,000 cartons of stock. Now, just for the sake of argument, it was an average of 50 units per box, which means 50,000 units of stock just in my back room. That's not including on the floor. That's not including, that was in the excess space. That's not including the back room. That's not including the shop floor. And that was across 2 stores. So like that was one store, the other store had, let's say, 2/3 of that. So it was a lot of stock, a lot of pressure. There was a lot of bullshit that I was dealing with. And I just couldn't commit to it. So I left. I just claimed mental health and I said, this is fucked. I can't do this anymore. And so I left. And when I was leaving, I had approached another business. Actually, no, I wasn't. I hadn't made the decision to leave. I'd approached this other business and spoken to the national manager, who I had built a rapport with over the time as my dual store role. She would pop in every now and again and say good day and whatever, I guess, trying to maintain rapport. And we had spoken. I told her that I was just not feeling it. And she basically told me that she would love me for a regional role. And I was like, booyah, that is a promotion from my dual store role into a regional role. Things are meant to happen. This is crazy. How could that have been? And so we had a discussion about it, and I decided that was what I wanted to do, and that I was going to leave. And so I had the discussion with her, and she basically told me that the regional role didn't exist, but the business was looking to expand the next year. And when they did expand, she needed someone to help take over the state of Victoria, while she ran the rest of it. And I was like, yep, done deal. She promised me 38 hours a week as a casual. I would work and learn the business as a casual, and then the opportunity would become available around now. So March, April, she said. And I was like, yep, done deal. And I was so willing to get out of my current situation that, I was able to walk straight into another situation. I was like, fuck, this is easy, right? Imagine that. Most of the time you got to go and apply for work, look for work, do all this. And I just had one conversation. She didn't look at a resume. She didn't have a reference, nothing. She just hired me, right? So that was red flag number 1. That's what should have been red flag number 1. But looking back on it, hindsight's always 20/20. It was too good to be true. So skip forward, I joined the team as a casual, coming off dual store management and like the worst mental health of my life. And I start working in a store with other casuals, right? Now, these other casuals have all been with the business for anywhere between 4 months and 5 years, right? And I'm trying to assimilate with them, and I'm trying to be one with them and learn how to be a casual again. But I just have a different ambition and a different drive that these guys didn't have. Now, does that make me better than them? No, but yes, it depends on how you look at it, right? I also had this idea that I was moving into regional, and I couldn't tell anybody about it because I didn't want them to know that eventually I would be their boss, because then they would treat me differently and I couldn't assimilate, yada, yada, yada. The stress of the story. And so over time, so what happened originally was this boy, I don't want to say his name, but one of the boys that was working there was starting to cause issues because I made a comment about ADHD, not believing in it. Now, I'll go into a story about that. I obviously believe it exists, but there's nuances to it. Anyway, I'm not going to go into that now. Now, I didn't make that comment to him. I made that comment to one of the other guys that I worked with that I thought was cool. Anyway, he's gone and he's told the boy that had ADHD that I had used his name and said that the story that he told me about his ADHD was silly, whatever. It was made into a big deal that it didn't have to be. He could have come and spoken to me, said, hey, that's not cool. I would have apologized and we would have moved on, right? But that's not what happened, because he had meddled in it. And so, boy 1 who has ADHD finds out from boy 2, who I had told about what I'd said, or I had told about my thoughts behind it. So boy 2 had gone to boy 1, and then boy 2 had gone to the manager. And the manager, I guess, didn't know how to deal with it and took it to the national manager. So that's, number 1, the national manager thinks that I'm a troublemaker, right? I apologize. It is what it is. And then since then, I find out that this boy 1 that was upset with me started talking absolute shit. So I claim bullying, because that's what it was, right? His partner worked in one of the other shops. They were both sort of just, there was this vendetta against me, which is understandable without context. And they avoided rostering us on together, which I think was to our detriment because we didn't get to speak. Eventually, I get to speak to him. I tell him my thoughts. He tells me his thoughts. We hash it out, and we're all good. But the manager and national manager have decided that things have gone too far, so they decide to remove these two boys from the system. Now, obviously, I wasn't the first person fired, so let's make that very clear. So these two boys get fired, and after or around that time, during that time, I work out in a different store. I'm trying to be helpful. I'm trying to get to know the business. I'm trying to meet other people, and I work with boy 3, let's call him. So boy 3 is best friends with boy 2 from high school, and so I worked with him once before. He's pretty cool. And then one day, boy 2 and I decide to prank call boy 3. And we're on the phone for 43 seconds. And it ruined his life. If you could hear the story, if you could hear anything about this, and I'm not going to divulge things because I'm trying to keep everything confidential. But if you could understand that boy 3 took this prank call to be the worst thing, I could have shot his dog and this prank call would have been worse. Like, I pretended to do a silly voice. I made a joke about how that I needed I had a jacket put aside in 3XL. The business didn't do 3XL. Like just little things. It was a bunch of silly stuff. We're on the phone for 43 seconds. Anyway, following that, I worked with him the next day. We hashed it out. We had a conversation about it. I was like, dude, I thought you were cool. I'm sorry. I was a bit of a smartass about it. I'm not going to lie. But at the same time, it was like, come on, bro. You're being a sook about a 43-second phone call. A phone call that I was pressured into doing by boy 2, who was your best friend, right? I thought I was part of the joke, but it turns out that we don't know each other like that. And so you took offense. It is what it is, right? Anyway, after boy 1 and his partner get fired, boy 3, I've spoken with boy 2. We've built a relationship, and he was, at the time, boy 3 wasn't talking to boy 2, and so he messaged me a screenshot of him like trying to reach out 3 times with no response, and he said, let's see if boy 3 responds to me this time. And so I respond saying something to the effect of, what a pussy. And then boy 2 and boy 3 start talking again, and that, I guess, comes out. And so now boy 3 has complained to his boss, who's then complained to national manager, and this is strike 2. I've called him a pussy, right? Now, I love the irony behind I've called someone a pussy, and then they went and complained about being called a pussy. I just feel like that's a pussy move. Anyway, and like let's not say this. I'm not calling him a girl. I'm calling him a chicken, right? There's a difference. I shouldn't use the word pussy, but pussy here is synonymous with like chicken, like bark, 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 like chicken. Like you're not going to jump from the edge of the cliff into the water because you're a chicken, not you are lady genitalia. So anyway, that goes down, and in the meantime, boy 1's partner, or boyfriend, I can say boyfriend now, but what boy 1's partner, who's been fired, goes to Fair Work because he's claiming that was unfair dismissal. And so that's all happening at the same time. So boy 1 and his boyfriend get fired because they were toxic and bullying me, who'd just come across. Boy 2 and boy 3 have reconciled their friendship, and boy 3 is upset that I called him a pussy, and he was a pussy, so he's gone to complain about me. Now, and honestly, like I understand all perspectives here. And so on top of that, boy 1 and his partner have gone to Fair Work and said we're claiming unfair dismissal, because boy 1 was the problem, but boy 2 was sort of fired as contingency for boy 1's problems. You can't really keep someone else's partner after firing their partner. It's like kind of awkward, right? But you can't fire them without having clear guidelines, and so it was unfair dismissal because things weren't explained to him. So I think, and mind you, I'm leaving work on Monday. I've prepped the shop. I'm setting up for stock take. I'm expecting to come in for a shift the next day, and they get a call from the HR manager, and she says, essentially, things aren't working out, and we're finishing you up, like as of today, as of right now. And I was like, whoa, okay, that's wild, because I did not see that coming. because up until that point, I didn't think that I had done anything wrong. And even now, I look back on it, and I don't think that I did anything that warranted being let go. But because I was involved in the situation that led to these boys being fired and Fair Work becoming involved, I believe that I was fired as contingency because they can't turn around and say it was unfair dismissal if they lost their jobs and I didn't. So the business, making a business decision, has turned around and said, they can turn around to Fair Work and say, no, we fired all three of them. Like, all the problems are gone. All three of them were fired. So anyway, that's where I was at. So I was bummed out. I was embarrassed. I was having a hard time coping and not coping, but processing it, right? Because no one likes to be fired in general. But there's also different perspectives you can look at it. Like, I left that job for a regional role that I was sort of promised. They weren't looking at that role becoming available this year at all. And so they've promised me 38 hours a week. That role's not becoming available. I'm a casual. They're wasting money. See you later, right? It could have been any point at the drop of a hat. They could have just cut my shifts all the way back or canceled my recruitment. And I think that it didn't help that the word ego was thrown around a few times. And I get upset when that gets thrown around because I'm just trying to be helpful. I don't have an ego because I think I'm better. I have an ego because I think I'm getting a job that I don't have. I think that I'm already their boss in a way, right? Like I'm acting like I'm not their boss, but I'm keeping a note mentally of all the things that are happening. So anyway, that's what's happened. So right now I'm job hunting. I was getting a haircut today, and one of the boys that was sitting next to me was actually looking for staff. So, everything happens for a reason. And that's why I started this podcast with that quote. Even though I'm not religious, you could turn it into the universe, but, if God removes you from a table, it's because he's trying to save you from the poison they were serving. I learned very quickly that that the business I went to was not any different from the business I came from. In fact, the fact that it was smaller meant that it was more tight-knit. I learned that I'm very trusting. I'm too trusting. I should have had some sort of a contract written up. I should have had some sort of confirmation. I should have asked for part-time or permanent part-time or full-time contract or something like that. There was a lot of different things that I could have done differently, and I don't think that talking less shit is one of them, quite frankly, because I think that I talked just the right amount of shit. I just didn't factor in how soft the people I was talking shit to were going to be. And I think that there was, quite frankly, a vendetta. I said the other day, I'm not willing to be any less of who I am to make other people feel comfortable about who they're not. And I think that's true. I'm ambitious, I'm motivated, I'm tenacious, I've got a good attitude, and I try. And when you work as a casual, and when you manage teams and you go back to being a casual, I think there can be some sort of a disagreement or a misunderstanding about the level of work that you're required to do and the level of work that your colleagues can do, like what they're capable of or whatever, I don't know. But because I'd managed stores before, I was able to assist in running the stores. And I think that the other casuals sort of got a bit of a confusion about who I was, what I was about, what was going on. So I think there was mistakes made all around. I think it was a complete fuck around, a complete fuck up from every angle. But I consider myself right now a free man. I consider myself in a very fortunate position to have learned some valuable lessons. I've been humbled in a way that I've never been humbled before, because I chased the dream rather than creating it. And there's a level of embarrassment that goes into that. But what is this podcast if it's not going to be confessional, if I'm not going to be talking about the things that are happening to me in real time? That's what this is all about. Thank you for listening. Enjoy the rest of your day. And if you have advice or if you know anyone in Melbourne who's hiring, let me know. Cheers.